excuse me. So that started now. And let me go ahead and just get everyone checked in here. We have Edward Wright. Mr. Wright, if you could unmute. Let me know who you're representing here today. It looks like you are probably the applicant.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted now.
You are.
Good. I'm the architect of the project. I submitted the application, working with the owner.
Great. Okay, welcome. We have Trey Sheldon, zoning plans examiner with us as well. Hey, Trey.
Hi, David.
Welcome. Mr. Wright, are you expecting anyone else to join us here today on the applicant owner side?
I thought the owner would be available, but perhaps not.
Okay. If you'd like, we can give him a few minutes to join, or we can get started, and I can bring him in if he does join at any time.
I would say let's proceed.
Okay, great. Got one more administrative thing I need to cover here. So like I said, if he joins at any time, I'll just bring him in. I'm going to read through our hearing script. This is basically just the procedure for the hearing. This is the December 7th, 2022 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning hearing examiner for the city of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20220170. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. If there were anyone here from the public, they'd have an opportunity to speak after the applicant had presented its case. I'll give Trey an opportunity to weigh in with any testimony in addition to his staff report. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offered in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speakers to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who is not present at this hearing. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom technology, I will do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect in the tech that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with the hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay, the last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. If you intend on providing any testimony here today, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if you could each raise your right hand, I need you to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. All right. Mr. Wright, are you ready to proceed?
Yes.
Great. Floor is yours.
So our request is to for relief in 2 areas, for parking and for density. And the backstory of this is the property owner purchased this apartment unit a number of years ago and has operated this space in question as an apartment. But through assisting him in obtaining an HVAC permit, we discovered that there was no paper trail identifying it as a residence. We couldn't find it in the records. So we have prepared a set of drawings to show compliance with the building code, worked with the plan reviewer to sort out any issues, and have received their approval to actually establish this as to change the use from what on paper was a business use to a residential use. And so now we come to the zoning department to appeal for parking and density. So we are in a part of the West End that is has the Central Park retaining wall along us, and so there's a fair amount of on-street parking. Given the historic nature of the building and the fact that the building takes up the full piece of property, there's no area to park on the property, and we are in an area of the city where there aren't any public lots or private lots available to rent. So the 600-foot radius is something we can't meet. But because of that circumstance of being in an area of the city where there is a fair amount of parking, and that it has existed as an apartment, it really isn't going to be a burden on the neighborhood to have this on-street parking. It's not going to oversaturate it. And the density is just simply a mathematical reality. We're so close to complying. We're within a few square feet of the 700 square foot rule, but we don't meet it. And so to keep this space of the building viable, useful, we need a little relief on that side of the code as well. And because even though there are two commercial spaces that face Central, and I've met with the prospective tenants, but nothing has happened for many years. So it's a little tough pocket to get commercial activity in there, but it has a good track record of residential use. So this whole process is to officially establish this area, this part of the building. It's really just 2 rooms as an apartment. It's been successfully rented out that way for nearly 20 years. It's not currently occupied because we've discovered that we can't. And so that's the summary of what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. Just a few questions. You said that this particular building and space has been operating as an apartment building with 7 dwelling units for 20 years.
Nearly so, yes. The precise moment, so I think in about 2004, if I remember correctly, there was a set of drawings issued to renovate the upper floors, to modernize them. And it's come to our attention that this particular part of the building was identified as a business use. So sometime between 2004 and the soon thereafter, we estimate this was built out as an apartment space. So when my client purchased it, I think 2011, 2015, somewhere in that range, it was already operating as an apartment space.
And when you say you mean the entire building or just
the upper floors of the building have always been residential from way back.
Right. Okay.
For decades, if not a century.
Right.
And so this is a first floor space in the rear that faces the alley.
Gotcha.
That is the space in question. It's about 2 rooms, maybe 350-ish, 400 square feet of space.
Got it. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Let's see. So this is essentially just you caught that it was never actually permitted, this particular space, to be an apartment. You caught that upon HVAC, and now you're just coming in to clean up the permits. Is that right?
Yeah, we want to make it legit.
Got it. Okay.
David, I think they might have ordered a zoning verification letter as well for financing or something to do the remodeling project. And I caught that at that time and talked through with Mr. Wright, and we did realize that part. What I didn't realize, this is kind of a unique building because I can.
Is this why it was never a legally non-conforming?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
That sounds like it may have predated the zoning code.
Well, we don't know any of that information. All we know, as Mr. Wright stated, is that drawings from all the previous drawings that I could find, and any even plumbing permits and other things, called that part of the building, which is a separate address. It's a little curious. I mean, if you look at, I'm trying to see the figure on even when I initially reviewed the permit, it wasn't obvious to me that we're talking about what presents as kind of one building and a facade from the street view is actually completely cordoned off into 2 separate addresses of 2161 and 2159. So when this first came in from them, I didn't realize we had a density issue. I just said, oh, there's a parking issue, right? And I went back and I looked at the drawings and so on, and all the permits and so on for 2159 Central, and it only had it only had 4 units listed in everything uniformly. Okay. And per Mr. Wright stated, it also showed that rear space, which now he has identified in figure 5 proposed ground floor plan, both the apartment 1 and bedroom space. And that back space behind 2161 is also completely separate from that 2161 Central. So when I first did my permit review, I wasn't realized that this was being treated as one building, at least on one lot. And so I thought that it had enough acreage at 4,500 and some square feet that it would meet that number of units more than. It became clear to me, I was out of the country briefly for a couple of weeks, and when I returned, Mr. Wright and I realized that I called him immediately and said, "Oh shoot, I realized you've just gone from 4 to 5 units, not 6 to 7." I hope this makes sense, David, because there are 2 other units over in 2161 Central, but those 2 addresses of those 2 kind of separated. They appear as the same building, but they have a solid masonry wall in between them that makes them you can't have egress between them, and that we were able, thankfully, to add the density, and Mr. Wright understood, and I added that to my staff report because they need. It's not a very big ask, but it was they're 4,500 and change, I think, and they would need 4,900 for 700 square foot each for each unit. So the reason I couldn't come to the conclusion that it was legally non-conforming is just as Mr. Wright stated. Drawings going back to 2004 and I think maybe even after, some of these different drawings and permits for various things, HVAC, plumbing, and so on, any kind of work that was done consistently showed 2159 as having 4 units. Then it was advertised, apparently somebody, I guess, converted it to an apartment, or else it was never caught in the permitting. I do not know. Neither me nor Mr. Wright can testify that. We don't have an idea. We don't know when that happened. At some point after that, it became an apartment because it was advertised as such when on the MLS and so on with photographs when it was purchased by Mr. Wright's client in circa 2015. Is that about right, Mr. Wright?
Approximately right, yes.
Yeah, around 2015. So we really don't know when this occurred. So we're just trying to clean this up because we don't really have any inherent proof of when it occurred. It clearly was not permitted. And that's what brings us here.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Trey. Anything else you want to add via your staff report or anything else?
Just that the area really does have a significant amount of parking, both from my aerial shot that you can see on there, the aerial cages image there, that's figure 2, and also from the 2 photos that follow later on, they're street photos that Mr. Wright provided. Hey, Phil, hey, I'm in a hearing. Okay, sorry, I've got somebody talking.
Let me ask this. In that block, going down to Bank Street and across Kendall, it looks like there's quite a bit of residential housing structures there. Is it mostly multifamily, single family? Is there a sense for the surrounding neighborhood?
I think it's somewhat of a mixed bag, very similar. You recently had a case of ZH20220170 that my colleague Wes Monzel, very similar mix of different uses in the vicinity. Sometimes it's tough to even know because when you go to unless you went into, okay, I can't. Hey, can you guys hold it down a minute? I'm in a hearing. Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Anyhow,
we can't hear them at all for what it's
okay,
worth.
good. Okay, good. Anyhow, so what I'm getting at is that to do a complete survey basically of this, Mr. Munzel spoke to this in his staff report as well, to do a complete analysis of every single one of them, you'd have to go through the building permit history of every single one, every one of these, because for some of them that are more than one unit, the auditor's office just says 3 to 7 units or 4 to 19 or something. It's just a very broad stroke that they provide. So I would say this is a very mixed use neighborhood. It's got some commercial uses, some bordering on industrial, and then mostly, a mix of residential and commercial in the immediate vicinity.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, there is a lot of street parking. There do appear to be some of these buildings are vacant. Some are probably going to be redeveloped, just like this, going on into the future. But there is a great deal of street parking in the vicinity. Almost all of the streets have some parking, and some of the units even have, you'll see the one between Kimple Alley and Kendall, for example. I mean, it's got a parking lot, right? So some of that has off-street parking in it. So
Yep.
It's very similar to the case in 147, which was just only, I think all of a half dozen blocks or so on the way.
Yep. Okay. Let's see.
And in any case, this is not asking for parking. The rest of this would be entirely grandfathered to legal non-conforming. Of course, we're only talking about this one small unit, which would only require one parking space. So we're not talking about a brand new, 15 unit building or something. We're talking about one small unit.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think I've got a sense for, what's going on here, and sort of understand the conditions. Mr. Wright, is there anything you'd like to say in closing or in response to anything that Mr. Sheldon has said before we adjourn here today?
I don't think it's going to be a real, it's been an existing condition. And so having people living in this space is nothing new to this area. We just want to make it official and make some adjustments on the building code side to make it compliant with today's rules. And now we're before this panel to make it official on the zoning side.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's leave it at that then. I've had a chance to review the application materials, the staff report. I agree that I think it would be impractical to sort of remove this, what's been, well, maybe not officially legal non-conforming, long-standing non-conforming use. And so I'm going to approve the application based on that and based on the testimony that I've heard here today. I need to formalize that, Mr. Wright, in a written decision. And that usually does take about 2 weeks based on the current queue of cases that I have right now. What I do is I put that into a PDF and I email it to you as soon as it's complete. So you'll have a copy of it really just moments after it's done. As soon as you have that, you can work with Trey on getting the permitting approved.
Great. Understood. Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to myself or to Trey. And if you'd like a status update on the decision, you can reach out to me directly.
Okay. Very good.
All right. Great.